So welcome again. My name is Kayla Klein. I'm the Director of Early Learners South Dakota. Today we're going to dive into the South Dakota Association for the Education of Young Children, also known as SDAYC or SDAEYC. Today we have with us amazing speakers and just human beings all around. Janessa Bixel is the Executive Director of SDAYC. She's going to be starting us off today. And then we have Kay Cutler, who is the president-elect of SDAYC, and then Kevin Nelson is the current president. I will let them kind of give a little bit more overview as they get started, and some folks might still be filtering in, but in order to be really present of everyone's time, we'll go ahead and get started. And so without further ado, Janessa, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Kayla. And also just to mention, Kayla is one of our speakers as well today, once we get to our advocacy section. So as Kayla said, I am Janessa Bixel. I've been in early education since the 90s. I've been a part of NAEYC to some degree since 2005 in multiple states, being a military spouse, and have lived in South Dakota since 2015. So I'm on my 10th year now. And I've been involved with South Dakota AEYC ever since I moved here. So I am going to give a little bit of the history, and I will say some of it is stories that have been told to me. I haven't been here for the duration of the history of South Dakota, but I've heard stories from people who have been. So we're going to dive into that. So just a little bit, first, the history of NAEYC. So the National Association for the Education of Young Children was founded in 1926, so they're getting ready to come up on their 100th year next year. And it was founded by a group of early educators and advocates who recognized the importance of improving the quality of education and care for young children. Just to go through this timeline a little bit, in 1926 is when NAEYC was first established. However, it had a different name. It was the National Association for Nursery Education, or NANE. And it was founded in Washington, D.C. The idea came from a conference that was held at the Bureau of Education, which was part of the U.S. Department of the Interior, where educators saw a need for an organization dedicated to promoting high standards for nursery schools, which is what early childhood was called back then, and early childhood education. So in the early years, the organization's mission was to promote research and share best practices in early childhood education, advocate for high quality programs serving young children, and provide professional development for educators, which, as you will find out, those are things that are very much still relevant. There was a name change in 1964. NANE became NAEYC to better reflect the broader scope of early childhood education beyond nursery schools. So in growth, over time, NAEYC grew into the largest professional organization for early childhood educators in the United States, setting standards for early learning programs and offering accreditation, publications, conferences, and advocacy. So the core purpose of NAEYC from its founding has always been to promote high quality early education and care for young children while supporting the professionals who work with them. So SDAEYC in the beginning. SDAEYC started when there were siblings attended a national conference. Once again, interesting that NAEYC was established by going to a conference, and then SDAEYC was established by going to a conference. There was Pat Straub and Char Ellis were sisters who lived in Brookings and worked at SDSU. And together with their brother who lived in Sioux Falls, they attended a NAEYC conference. Inspired by the conference and a bit of sibling rivalry, the sisters bet their brother that they could start a NAEYC affiliate chapter before he could. Well, in 1976, there was, we have record of the first round of officers, and I will tell you, it's one of those typewriter, if you remember the duplicate sheets that turn things kind of blue, we have that on record still. So we had our first round of presidents, and Dick Raymond out of Sioux Falls was the first, or I should say first officers. Dick Raymond was the first president. Gladys Storm out of Rapid City was the first vice president. Kathy Walters out of Brookings was the secretary, and Kathy Coulter out of Sioux Falls was the first treasurer. So we had our firsts way back in 1976. So that means we're getting ready to come up on our 50th year as NACY comes up on their 70th year or 100th year next year. We also had our first affiliates at that time that were born, the Black Hills affiliate, the East Central, the Siouxland, and the Upper Missouri. And you can see the leaders of those affiliates listed there as well. And also back then, we had our first committees. So newsletter, which news, and yes, they mailed it out. So I did capture an image that news was mailed out because email was not around then. Newsletter was a committee, public policy, nominations, and public information. So getting those communications out, think Facebook, that's the equivalent today. So where we've been, like I said earlier with NACY, the focus since conception has been advocacy and professional development. Well, in the 80s, things started to shape up. The South Dakota Department of Education approached SDAEYC with funding for an operations manager to help develop an intervention model with the state of South Dakota. And that first person who was hired was Marilyn Levinson, and her office was in Vermillion. And I do not know these people personally. Maybe some of you do. Then we get into trends in the 80s and 90s where there was a focus on awareness and issues. So the kids on the block puppets that you can see on the lower right, they were used throughout the state, led by, I see some heads nodding, some people recognize these. They were used throughout the state. There was the model projects at St. Luke's and Pierre. There was a TV program with Rob Reiner called I Am Your Child. It was a whole set raising awareness about early childhood and the Stand for Children movement. And then there was also a Worthy Wage campaign that was in South Dakota, but also expanded across the nation. So then we get into the, later on in the 90s, and SDAEYC, or South Dakota Association for the Education of Young Children, and the South Dakota Head Start Association joined together to host the annual Early Childhood Conference. Now, keep in mind, SDAEYC had been hosting this conference since actually 1974, but in 1999, we developed a partnership with the Head Start Association, and just a couple years ago rebranded to a brand new logo that you see here in the center, because we found that we're stronger together whenever we partner across the state with Head Start and ourselves. So then 2017, this was kind of a big change for us as an affiliate in South Dakota. We had multiple affiliates across the state, but NACY decided that there was going to be some regulations on what it meant to be an affiliate. And part of it was financial. You had to hit a certain threshold of a budget to be considered an affiliate. And some of our smaller affiliates across the state just weren't doing that. And in fact, that existed across many states. And so most states, not all, but most states have only a single affiliate. There are some that have really large populations, California being one, Arizona being one, where they might have a couple of affiliates. But most states do have the one. And then what used to be affiliates, like the Black Hills AEYC or the Siouxland AEYC, East Central, Capital Connections, they all became chapters. And a couple of things, big things that happened during this time is that we all merged under one tax ID number, which meant the dissolving of all the other affiliates that became chapters. And we had consistent new branding and logos, as you can see here. So all of our chapters now have that consistent branding. And actually, all affiliates across the nation have their initials, like Utah is UTAEYC, Nebraska is NEAEYC, and each state chose a color. South Dakota chose blue at that time, and that became our key color. So just to give some perspective here on our chapters that I mentioned, you can see here chapters are divided by county. That this is how we do it in South Dakota. And I will say there's only about 28 affiliates across the nation that actually do have chapters, but one reason we decided to keep those chapters is to honor the previous affiliates, but also to make sure that, South Dakota is a vast state, and we really want to make sure that we're representing each region as it should be. And so we have Black Hills out in western South Dakota, Capital Connections down central South Dakota. East Central is that upper northeast corner, and then Siouxland is the lower
18.5 foot aluminum boat.
southeast corner.
You're up for Sunday's ass. Super cool.
I'm sorry, Janessa.
It's
I
okay. I
accidentally
just saw it pop up.
Thank you.
Yep. I was just going to say, if you want more information about the chapters and the representatives in each of those areas, you can visit our website, www.sdaeyc.org, and you go to About Us, hover and drop down, and there's a chapter page that will take you to that. And most of our chapters also have Facebook pages as well, and you can click those direct links from our website and go straight to those Facebook pages. All right, then we have 2024. Well, 2025 is our new icon, but during our 2024 strategic planning, we set out to create a more unified visual identity between our advocacy program, Early Learner South Dakota. You can see that icon on the right side there, and our already established SDAEYC branding. The Early Learner logo, originally developed in 2019, featured blue, pink, and lime green. And we wanted to pull those colors into our other branding. We also noticed that several other AEYCs were incorporating an icon in their branding, so we explored what would best represent South Dakota, and the sunray emerged as the perfect symbol. To align with NACY's updated branding, we refreshed the ELSD colors, just kind of slightly made changes to the pink and green, and use that same blue that we had. And why the sunray? Well, we did actually have to plead our case and even tell NACY why we wanted this, but we pulled together and talked about what meant the most to us in our advocacy work, in our professional development, in our professional services work, and just operations across the state. And, we have certain icons that are meaningful to certain areas, but not necessarily to the whole entire state. But the sun was one of those that hit home for everybody. So a sense of place. The green represents South Dakota's vast landscapes, while the blue and pink reflect the vibrant, colorful skies that are so iconic across our state. Warmth and community. Sun rays evoke warmth, growth, and vitality, which are qualities that mirror our commitment to supporting early childhood professionals and advocating for children across South Dakota. And consistency and reliability. Just like the sun, we aim to be a steady, dependable presence in the lives of those we serve, radiating positivity and light. We're excited to roll out this refreshed, cohesive look that visually ties our work together and reflects the heart of South Dakota. So this looks like a pretty complicated image here, but it is our organizational chart, and we are a complex organization. We have a lot of things that we're doing. Throughout our strategic planning, we landed on this kind of triangle that really helps us showcase all of the work that we do. So at the top of the triangle, we've got our operations. We have our governing board, which includes some committees, executive, finance, and governance. They make sure that we're meeting all the nonprofit standards, and they actually oversee me as the executive director. And then we have on the right side, we've got our early learner work, our advocacy work essentially, that's green. And we do have Kayla as our early learner South Dakota director. And under that, we've got our early learner programming, which includes our early learning communities committee and our public policy and advocacy committee. And then over in the pink on the left, we have our professional services programming. We do not have a professional services director yet, but we are working on that. Same with the executive assistant. I would love to duplicate myself. We definitely could use some more staff, but that does require funding, so we are working on that. And under professional services, we have our membership and outreach, which includes our conferences and our recognition that we do. We do annual awards, things like that, and our professional development, which Kay will be talking about a little bit more, and Kayla will be talking a little bit more about the advocacy side. But I do want to also point out down at the bottom, the TriShare program coordinator. We partner with the John T. Vukovich Foundation out of Rapid City, and we're working on a pilot program for TriShare, which is where Vukovich pays a third, employer pays a third, and the family pays a third of childcare for the gap of 219% to 325% of federal poverty level. Um, where we have a cap of 30 children to participate in that program, and that's a 3-year pilot that the Vukovich reached out to us, and we're partnering with them on that to try to help resolve one of the solutions to the childcare crisis that so many people have been impacted by across the state. Next, we have our current priorities. So I mentioned strategic planning. So 4 key areas came out of strategic planning that we really need to work on right now because we grew exponentially over the last several years. And one of those was internal capacity building. So working on increasing that staffing, like I mentioned, growing our committees. We actually streamlined our board a little bit, and we're really trying to hone in and focus on our chapters a lot more because they are the boots on the ground people in our regions. Then marketing, I did mention that too. We have our our branding that we're working on, but we're continually working on a consistent message. And then program development. So this includes includes our professional services, our advocacy, and our early learning communities that we're working on. And then finally, that fundraising. SDAEYC's never really been um, a, a organization that reached out and asked for fundraising, but we are looking at what fundraising looks like for us in the future because we do really work with a lot of private foundations to get funding through grants, those types of things. And we have intentionally not taken state or federal funding in order so that we would not be censored in the work that we do because a lot of the things like social and emotional development, equity work, things like that have been really important to the work that we've done over the years. And so we just want to make sure that we are paving the path forward that meets our needs and respects our mission. And so we actually are working on all of those. You can scan that QR code if you're interested in being on one of our committees. I'll just go back real quick. The membership outreach, professional development, early learning communities, policy and advocacy are 4 key committees to be a part of. But that QR code takes you to that. There's also a link on our website if you'd like to join a committee, and the website's listed there. And with that, Kayla, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Just real briefly, my journey with SDAEYC actually started almost nearly 15 years ago now, and I've always loved the organization. I was the public policy chair for a while, and now I helped. I was one of the founding members of Early Learner South Dakota back in, gosh, 2018. December 2018 was the first meeting where this was all discussed. So fast forward now, I am a part-time employee with AEYC, and it's been amazing. So I might have to have you click for me. Thank you, Janessa. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our approach. So I kind of talk about Early Learner South Dakota as looking as a top-down approach and then a bottom-up approach. So thinking of top-down, that's kind of that very high-level legislative, administrative rules. For those of you who may not know what administrative rule is, that's basically the departments within our state can kind of make rules as they go through a process, which means you can avoid the legislative process. So we work with the state departments on admin rule. And then, of course, some of you may have kind of seen our work in the legislature last year. I've become a registered lobbyist for the last 4 years for AEYC. And then we actually had another lobbyist working with us who pushed really 3 amazing pieces of legislation. That's kind of our top-down approach, right? We want to talk with the influencers, the decision makers at the top, so then everyone can be positively affected, and it's a domino effect throughout South Dakota. And then our bottom-up approach, that's where we're looking at our early learner community process. So Kay and Kevin are really just the game changers when it comes to this. They have done so much work around this, but we have an entire process that's created, but this is where we want to see advocacy and change happening in the community level for and by the communities. So early learner communities, that's an entirely different full webinar in and of itself. So just on a high level, we use the National League of Cities approach. And then locally, well, statewide, we've created what's called an LCAT. So we're able to assess kind of where a community's at, where their areas for growth are. And then we've created an MOU, and we support the community as a overarching organization throughout this process. And it's really not meant to be a process that's just a quick one and done. It's meant to be kind of a process that takes time, and it's always evolving, and you're always really just making your community better for the children and families in it. Uh-oh. We lost, I think we lost Janessa, but thankfully I have the slideshow up and I will just transition. Uh-oh. Oh no. Can you guys hear me still?
Yes,
Oh, can you see my screen?
it's starting.
Oh, okay, good.
It hasn't-
Everybody froze, so I thought, oh, this is not going to be good. Okay. There we go. And then, of course, at the community level, we talk with local advocates, and these are the folks who really get things done. And we saw this really actually happening during the legislative session this last year. The advocates are connected to their elected officials, right? The folks who are representing them within the state legislature. Not only that, but they also are starting to work with their city and county governments as well, and just programs on a local level. So these two things together is what we see as being like the true perfect storm of making things happen, and creating positive change and momentum for early childhood children, providers, and parents within our state. So how is it that we do that? We do this with a few very in a broad sense, many different ways, but here are kind of some of the main things here. We really wanted to create unified language. And when we talk about this is language that is for and by our membership. So if you're involved in one of those committees Janessa talked about, if you're coming to these, if you get emails from me on a regular basis, you are in this stakeholder family, if you will. And then, of course, being an SDAEYC member, you're always asked your thoughts, you're given surveys. We want to hear from our membership and our stakeholders what it is affecting them in maybe if it's in childcare, maybe it's with health and well-being of children, and how we can set our policy priorities moving forward for the next year. So the issues come from you all around the state. And then constant relationship building. So this is with elected officials, this is with our partner organizations, this is with our membership. Having this constant communication of what we're doing and wanting to hear from each other is what really helps make all of this so successful. And then we have an amazing organization called the Alliance for Early Success. And they not only give us some funding to support our advocacy and policy work, but they also have this other whole half that I think is almost as good as getting some money for the work, but is the TA partners. So they have national organizations all over the state who really help Early Learner South Dakota, AEYC, to get for free, essentially. So if we need help thinking of writing a bill, for example, or if we need help with creating our policy platform and we want suggestions, they really have a TA partner for almost anything we need. So we always have someone we can turn to if we get stuck, or if we need a little help, or if we simply just don't have the capacity. And if folks see things in the chat that I need questions for me, if you guys wouldn't mind letting me know, that would be great. Okay, so finally, putting this all into practice. So what are some very high level things that Early Learner South Dakota has done in order to make all of this work? So again, I talked about our annual legislative priorities. So we put this into our policy platform.
Chargers, mine too.
Sorry. So we put this all into our policy platform, and that way it helps us make decisions. Like if an organization asks us to maybe write a letter of support for a piece of legislation, we can either tell them yes or no based on our policy priorities that we've developed that year. It also helps us focus on what legislation we're going to create with some of our legislative champions. The creation of the statewide child care task force, that was a partnership that has been between Senator Reed and Early Learner South Dakota, SDAEYC. And this has really been a great way for us to collect more information and take the entire summer to research legislation that's happened in other states that's been successful, and really kind of establish legislative priorities together as a group moving into session. The thing I always say is the worst time to start advocating for some legislation is during the legislative session. The best time to start is actually right after legislative session. When everyone's they're done with the craze of legislative session, that's when you start talking to legislators and talking to lobbyists and other organizations about all the work you're going to be doing the next year. And that's what the Child Care Task Force helps us do. We have submitted recommendations and provided feedback to state departments before. A big example of that is we had a really intensive document of recommendations that we made for the COVID funds that came in. So we're able to act really quickly. Those TA partners we had actually read the federal and understood the bill and laws that were coming out for all of the funding that the states were getting. And they helped us make suggestions on how our state departments were kind of talking about how they wanted to spend the funds. And then we made some of the recommendations based on the issues and concerns we were hearing from you all in the field. We also do this with the state plan. The state plan is done every 3 years in South Dakota. And so we work directly with Department of Social Services during that time as well. And of course, the Early Learner Summit. This is where we bring everybody together. It's really a place to kind of hear, like, this is the state of childcare, where AEYC and Early Learner South Dakota are as far as legislation moving into next year. So just a little, I want to promote just for a quick second, our date for the Early Learner Summit this year is set for October 23rd. It's going to be in Chamberlain. So mark your calendars there, and we're going to be putting out a registration link shortly, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. And so the other thing we want you to just kind of think about too is consider a local project as an early learner community. So what that means, if you want to just look into getting the early learner community process started, or you have more questions about what that looks like or means to you, or what it could mean to your community, please feel free to reach out to myself, Janessa. We're the staff with AEYC, so you can start with us, and then we can kind of point you in the right direction. Another really great piece about the early learner communities that I forgot to mention before is that we also have navigators who support communities on a local level, and we're consistently looking for funding to provide mini and sub grants for this work as well. So that's something we're always doing in the back end. But if you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out and go from there. So I'm going to pause. Was there any questions in the chat?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
Kayla, no questions, but I've been supporting some of the things that you've said. I've added the Early Success, which is the link to the Alliance website. You can find us as a state ally on there, and there are some reports that the Alliance does. Also, I wanted everybody to know that we do have that report from the Hunt Institute on our Early Learner South Dakota website, and Children's Day at the Capitol. I don't know that we have a date yet, but that's always a
Yes.
great thing with our advocacy work. And that truly shows partnerships that we have across the state. When we see it's multiple days now, it's amazing. It's usually in January or February. I used to be really nervous about going to the Capitol, and now I look forward to that event every year. It's really amazing getting to share with legislators your passion for the work in early childhood, or anything related to children and families.
Right. And you guys can have a booth, or if you're just interested as an individual and you want to just see what it's all about, I will hand hold as much as you want. I can walk you through security even if you're nervous about that.
You did that for me on my first trip.
Yeah, I've done that, yes, for quite a few people now, and because it can be intimidating, but we want advocacy to feel like a fun and also a little less intimidating because it's just about educating and really could just be about telling your story too. So please do not ever hesitate to ask us how you can get involved, even if it's just at a program level and you want to do something individually. That we're here for you and we're here to support you and one thing I want to make sure is that Early Learner South Dakota, there's a reason why there's different names, but again, just Early Learner South Dakota is an advocacy arm of AEYC. So we're all kind of one organization. I want to make sure that those two things don't confuse anyone. All right, so thank you so much. And with that, I believe I'm turning it over to Kay.
Thank you. And you'll need to continue forward.
I realize that I'm in control now, so I will do that for you.
Thank you. So as a little bit of an introduction, I've been part of the SDAEYC since 1997. As I came into the state, I have been active either at the state level or more at the local level. I was also the Midwest rep, which no longer exists, for a certain period of time. And so I've always found that this is a great organization to be a part of and working with it. And so today I am talking a little bit about our professional services arm, which includes two committees, the Professional Services or Professional Development Committee and the Membership and Outreach Committee. And as Janessa said earlier, this was born out of a conference. And so that is something that has been part of it. The Membership Outreach Committee focuses on the conference itself, events that are happening that are either bi-monthly, like this work within the webinar, or the power hours that are done, as well as some of our recognition and marketing. So they work with the awards and things that are part of that. It's also within professional services, looking at supporting education, which is done through the conference and events, as well as looking at NAEYC accreditation supports, and this is all part of the Professional Development Committee. So thinking about what is the education in the state, what is the national accreditation process, and how that can be supporting local centers and work through that. And then also the student organization. So there's a lot of different things within professional services. And in 2024, during our strategic plan, we divided this out a little bit and developed a professional development committee. So I wanted to just focus in a little bit more on that committee itself. So in terms of that committee, we're looking at, and I think, Kayla, go ahead and put me forward one slide. Within that new committee, we're thinking about developing a crosswalk of the different professional development criteria that are currently coexisting in the state. So we have the SDSU core knowledge and competencies for early childhood education and school educators. We also have the NAEYC criteria, and we have the South Dakota Pathways to Professional Development. So this new committee is going to be working with these three documents and coming up with something that will cover or connect these three to make it a little bit more coherent for the professional development across the state. We're also looking at thinking about looking at what is there, and please go ahead and advance what is currently there. So we're going to be doing some mapping of what is currently out there. We have a lot of agencies that are doing awesome work and doing great work, and we want to highlight those. We want to lift those up. We're also wanting to do, as we do this mapping, think about where are some of the gaps. And because this is a new thing, we don't know where those gaps currently are. We've talked a little bit about mid-career things and thinking about how can we support people who are in their mid-career, and what does that look like? So those are some of the things that might be happening within this new professional development committee. We also might be creating a speakers bureau platform. And so that's something that might come out of it. I'm not sure, that we have talked about it. And it's exciting to see this happening. And so if you're interested in being part of this committee, you do not need to be a member of SDAEYC. So our operations committees are membership driven. However, those that are in membership and outreach or professional development or early learning communities, or the Public Policy and Advocacy Committee, those are can be individuals who are non-members as well as member made up. All right, go ahead and go to the next one. So if you're interested, here's a QR code, and on this website, you may choose whichever committee you would like to be a part of. Tell us a little bit of how you're interested in it, and we will be getting back to you. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn this over to Kevin, our current president.
Well, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Unlike the others who have spoken today, my tenure with this organization probably is the shortest of any of them. But of course, I could be a smart aleck and say that those first officers back in '76 were actually students of mine. But I won't do that. I will say this, that I've been in education for 30 plus years, most of it as an elementary principal, and I was pretty sure that learning probably started somewhere in the middle of fourth grade. Anything before that was kind of just prepping for it. And then Dr. Jared Jacobs at the University of South Dakota got a hold of me, straightened me out real quick, and everything has changed, and my paradigm shift was pretty pronounced. Um, and truthfully is this, I would be a horrible preschool teacher. I would, I just wouldn't be there. But what I have learned real quickly is the investment that early learning is, and the payout of it is second to none. There's a thought out there. It's called utilitarianism, which basically says that the morally right thing to do is whatever is best for the greatest number of people. And I believe in that. And as you look at brain research and you look at the longitudinal studies and you look at all of those things, plus being a principal and watching the demon copperheads come through our building. If you haven't read that book, please do at some point in time and understand what we're up against and what we can and should be doing. I think it becomes real clear to all of us that the investment here is really important. Kayla, back up let's see, go back one more. Another one, please. Okay, right there. Okay. I'm going to jump in and actually start by saying what Kay has brought together and talking about professional development, because when the part that I'm going to expand a little bit on is the whole idea of partnerships, and that we are not an island. We need groups to work together. And if I were to simply take a look at the criteria that we're trying to develop so that every person out there who works with young children, whether that's preschool teachers, childcare providers, parents, I don't care, whoever it happens to be, has opportunities to be the best at what they do when they work with children. And you look at these items, and you can dive into a little bit of the whole idea of the NAEYC accreditation, and you get into relationships and teaching and teachers and curriculum, and you look at health, and you look at those things, and then you take a look at the preschool levels of excellence, and you take a look at our early learning guidelines when you get into cognitive and social emotional. All of these things, this organization, we can't do it alone. So if you jump ahead again, Kayla, please, to right there. This is the beginning. This is the map of just some of the organizations that we partner with now, and we want to even partner with more. And organizations that I think that we're kindred spirits with, that we come together with an understanding of what early childhood's about. Many of these organizations obviously extend into older age children and adults and so on, but we all come together in a hub, if you will, and in our concerns about early childhood. So this is just a few of the organizations out there, and what we really want to be able to do. We believe we have to divide and conquer. And if there's one thing that I have noted since I've been a part of this whole process, especially in the area of early childhood, there's a couple things. Number one, the stark lack of support at the state level and so on in South Dakota, which puts us in a very small group. And the other thing is silos, and the passion that groups have about what they want, what they believe in, and so on, and they work independently on those things. I think one of our biggest tasks is going to be to maybe climb up the one silo and instead of tearing them down and wave at everybody in the other silos, and start to communicate and find commonalities between those. If we go to the next slide, please. So one of the things and what we're looking at, and the two areas I mentioned before, professional services. The other half of that is going to be advocacy, and all of us working together, moving in the right direction with a unified voice on some very, very important main talking points, main topics, some undisputed facts about early development and why it's important that we be involved with this. I think all of those things have to come together, and what I'm showing you here right now is where some of that is taking place. And that is in the work that we've been doing for about 4 to 5 years with early learning communities. Diving into Aberdeen, into Brookings, into Watertown, into Hartford and Beersford and Custer and Rapid City and hopefully others. We're starting to see that for the first time, we have city council members and others hearing about early childhood. They knew nothing about that. And so those are things that I think are very important. And then coming together and talking about, here are services that we can provide you to help you to be better at what you're doing. In the communities that I'm involved with, they've never seen any of that before. So I think we're starting in the right direction with coming together, with our advocacy, with our professional services, and making a difference. And again, yes, in these communities, but we want this to be across the state. We want this to be in every community, whether they're part of the early learning community or not. So that's all I have.
Kayla, go ahead and advance, and I'll do the next slide. So well, Kevin, it was you, but I'll do it. Just wanted everybody to know that we do have some upcoming events, like Kayla mentioned. I don't know about you guys, but I like seeing things in writing as well as hearing them. But our Early Learner Summit is at the Arrowwood Resort coming up October 23rd. There will be tickets out soon for that. NAEYC Annual Conference, we have to give a shout out to our national organization. That conference will be in Orlando, Florida. I'll be out there. If anybody else from South Dakota plans on going, I'd love to meet up and have lunch or something. And then, of course, our South Dakota Early Childhood Education Conference that we partner with Head Start on is in Rapid City for 2026, April 9th and 10th at the DoubleTree in downtown Rapid City. Next slide, and this should be our final slide. And if you have any questions, we have time. We have a little bit of time now to take some, but also feel free to connect with us in the future. Like Kevin's, well, actually, we are rounding the end of our term. So Kevin and Kay will be shifting in their positions coming up on July 1st. Kay will become the president. Kevin will become past president. These emails will stay active. We'll just have Jessica Schulte coming in as president-elect. And then myself and Kayla, you can always reach out to us. And once again, if you haven't been able to tell, we'd love for you guys to join a committee and help us get this amazing work done across our state. Once again, the QR code and our website, you can find out more information. The links to Early Learner are on our website as well. And with that, I thank everybody so much for being here today.
Does anyone have any questions before we officially wrap up for the day? We were a little
Fran, you
ahead of
had
schedule,
something,
which was
Fran, you had
amazing.
something in the chat earlier. Did you want to address that?
Sure, I can do that. When I think about the work that we've done with Early Learner South Dakota, and that it originally started out of a communities development project, the National League of Cities, and Mayor Allender brought that to Rapid City. Excellent program, but I know it needs to be tended to and cared for, but it seems that the onus should be on the cities to do that. I don't know if they could do it with the same passion that we do as early learner people, but just to comment on that. And, I'd like to see the cities that haven't engaged yet to take a stronger approach to supporting early learners.
Fran, maybe I'll answer that because I think
Sure.
what you're hitting on is exactly right. What we have run into, again, I'm serving as a navigator, but what I've run into in both communities is a mind shift that says, well, maybe we could have something at the library and so on. Well, that's not an initiative, that's an event. The initiative has to include policy change and it has to create something that's going to be embedded in the ongoing operations of the community. And I use the example all the time that cities don't say, hey, we should find some little place of land and have a park next week. We have a Parks and Rec department. And what we're advocating for is something very similar when we're coming to early childhood and families. And so our work is to get them there. And then once we get to a certain point, we're going to back off and let the communities do that same thing. But number one, just as I mentioned earlier, we have a long ways to go just to educate them on what's going on. We have many legislators who are completely convinced. They're still operating under very old ideas about what early childhood is. And once they come up to speed, the vast majority of them are like, oh my gosh, yeah, we need to do something. So yeah, I hear exactly what you want to, and truthfully, that is our goal, is to make it city directed, but we got to get them there.
And that's another reason that we have the MOU and that we require a leadership committee be developed in the community, because we are only taking so much on, right? Because we also don't have the capacity to do that. So I would say we have some, hopefully some safety nets built in to help the community kind of take that ownership.
And with that, in terms of their MOU and working with it, and building that ownership, it's really the support that SDAEYC is giving. We have developed a community of practice with early learner communities as well. And so it's a way for communities to support each other and to share solutions that they have developed, as well as issues that they've come up against, to find out if others are also doing that same thing. So with the navigator and with the tools, it's really about walking alongside cities and being that sounding board, as well as if there's things that Early Learner Nation with the National League of Cities has ideas or works or tools that are there, pointing those out as well. And so really the navigator is a guide in working with that. And SDAYC is here to support that work.
Yeah, great question. Anyone else have, oh, sorry, go ahead, Fran.
Thank you for the explanation, because I know that there's a very intelligent board working at the state level, and I'm not second guessing you. I just want to hear more about the reasons why. A second part of that would be, how do we get South Dakota Department of Education engaged in early learning? They of any organization should really should be supporting this work. It will help the outcomes of the children that come to the schools.
I would say we continue to build those relationships. And we really, DSS has had a lot of kind of stake in the childcare game, which childcare has really kind of been a primary policy platform subject area essentially. So we really haven't went really too much into the field of DOE being involved in some of the work and legislative work that we've done. But that's definitely a path. And even more so, we've even started really building some great relationships with Department of Health. And I think it's just, I see it growing, and it's always the time that it takes to kind of nurture a relationship and kind of continue that upward momentum for sure.
And I do want to just give a little bit of a shout out to Jody Burscheid with the collaboration office, because just a reminder, if anybody doesn't know, Head Start does fall under the Department of Education in South Dakota. And so, we do have a pretty strong partnership with Head Start. And there definitely is support currently through Department of Ed, through the Head Start Association.
Yep. And just strengthening that as we go, for sure. Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, again, I want to thank everyone so much for taking your time out of your afternoon here to join us today. And again, this will be on YouTube in the next couple of weeks. We have all of our past webinar series trainings on there as well. If you're interested, it's an array of options for you. So thank you again, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. And thank you to the other speakers for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. Bye.